Sean, what's up?
Greetings, Edgewenka.
Yes, my brother.
After 20 years since the passing of the territory's first chief minister, Hamilton Lavity Stout, and recognizing 16 years of political activity here in the BVI at the highest level, the first chief minister is being remembered as the territory's nation builder, as the father of the nation, so to speak, who quite interestingly passed away in 1995 on Mother's Day. So there you have it, the father of the nation passing away on Mother's Day. It's quite coincidental. But of course, he has been credited for some of the most significant developments in the territory, particularly as it relates to tourism, as it relates to the financial services sector. His work there in the construction of what we know now as the Government Central Administration Complex, and of course, the H. Lavity Stout Community College. All these and more have been credited to the life and work of H.L. Stout. At the 20th commemorative ceremony on Monday, March 2nd, we heard speeches from various leaders in the community, but one that stands out particularly for this discussion is comments that came from the wife of the premier, but let me give her credit, came from Mrs. Lorna Smith, OBE, and she had some quite interesting points to share about H.L. Stout.
Mr. Stout was relentless in the development of our tourism industry. He gave every support to our top hotels while never forgetting the importance of our smaller properties to the economy. Today, he would be beaming with pride at the modern, elegant facility that Maria's by the Sea has become, for example. Mr. Stout welcomed investors, and he made sure the environment was right for them to thrive and prosper. With Mr. Stout at the helm, the BVI became the sailing capital not of the Caribbean, but of the world. A position that we will hopefully maintain. Recent negative themes like the invaders are coming must cause Mr. Stout to roll over in his grave. These words would never have crossed his lips. You see, he understood the importance of investment, be it from the BVI or from beyond, to getting the economy moving. Today, there are many who find it fashionable or expedient to associate themselves with the late H.L. Truth be told, and this might sound harsh, for years, they secretly hoped that his contribution to this territory, in the words of Shakespeare, would be interred with his bones. As I said, this might be harsh, but in the words of the late Bob Marley, who the cap fits, let them wear it. And Honorable Foy, I'm not speaking to you. Neither am I speaking to the Honorable R.T. O'Neill, who was constantly at his side. The fact that we commemorate this birthday today with a public holiday is a powerful reminder of the strength of this community. For years, his family agitated, but they refused to be denied until it happened. Let's give them a round of applause.
Edgewenka, I don't know who Mrs. Smith was referring to as the people who refer to investors as invaders, but certainly she has made some quite sterling remarks as it relates to how she sees the role of the first chief minister versus what obtains from some politicians today.
Well, it would have been quite appropriate for the media to have done a news conference with her after the speech or after the activities. So that's disappointing that an important speech such as that, an important person such as Mrs. Smith, who worked with the then Chief Minister for many, many years as his permanent secretary, and certainly must have been privy to a personal relationship with him, perhaps know him better than most people, and understood his philosophy and the policies and goals that he was trying to achieve. So I think a press conference with her, to have her explain some of the things that she said in her speech and to even bring out further information would have certainly been appropriate, and perhaps his opportunity missed. There's no doubt, I guess, in people's minds that given the development of the country, that Mr. Stout and his party at the time created a trajectory for the country, put it on a path, a certain path of development to becoming a service industry, to move from an agrarian economy into a service economy, with tourism being the main economic sector. And certainly that has served us well over the years. And one of the, I think, the great achievements beyond all of the physical infrastructure that was developed under Mr. Stout's administration was the fact that he educated so many of the people. A lot of the persons that we see today in positions of authority in the civil service, heads of civil service, heads of captains of industry, well-educated persons, went away under his administration with scholarships, and the University of the West Indies at that time was a prominent university that persons from the Virgin Islands went to acquire their education. So he did a lot for education, and that education, that educated population certainly has served us well over the years in terms of our development on the path that he set. So I think that to me, yes, the college, of course, is part of the education, and the infrastructural development and the investment that he brought into the country certainly was important in the sense that he was able to use that money to educate many of his people. To me, that is really significant.
Certainly a very inclusive and progressive leader in H.L. Stout, particularly at the time when he ruled the territory in the 1980s into the early 1990s. One could argue that he was much ahead of his time in terms of some of the things that he advanced during that period. We may recall that the Caribbean was not so a progressive place in terms of financial services, and even in some cases too, some people were quite unwilling to open up to tourism development because there was a fear that for the most part it was foreign direct investment coming from Europe with folks who would have been the cousins and the descendants of the former people who benefited from the slave era. And there was that fear that the Europeans were coming to take over again, so to speak. But certainly when you look at the result of his inclusive and progressive approach, you have definitely reaped benefits. One thing I can say as well, that his approach to communication, that did not come out in this clip, but his approach to an open and transparent style of governance was also raised, at least Lorna made that known, of course being one of his permanent secretary during his tenure, and Mrs. Smith has served as a permanent secretary for all chief ministers in the territory.
Yeah. Well, I could see the argument about Europeans coming back to take over the country and to reestablish.
It's just a perception.
Yeah,
really.
that perception that people would have had at that time, and it's a fair perception. And if you look at the economy and the present economy, you can argue that there's a certain level of control, international control of our economy. And so, there's some pros and some cons. There's some sacrifices that we had to make. There are some concessions that we had to make in order for us to achieve the goals that we've achieved. And what I think is important is for us to monitor those concessions and those sacrifices and those achievements to make sure that they're properly balanced and that we remain on the path where we remain sustainable for generations to come.
Because at the end of the day, you have sovereignty. At the end of the day, you have your own indigenous government. It's no longer the case where governance is imported from outside. So in terms of ensuring that you maintain control of your resources, your natural resources, certainly you rely on the indigenous administrators to protect that sovereignty. And as it relates to the foreign direct investment, in a globalized situation, of course, we're moving from mercantilism, which was pretty much what existed during the slavery era, into what we know now as a globalized atmosphere or climate in terms of international relations. We know that we are interdependent, both in terms of our economical advancement and also in terms of our social and technological developments.
But I still don't think, I understand what you're saying. I still think we need to maintain our guard. You know, we need to.
But you must protect your sovereignty.
Yes, we need to make sure that
That
we are
goes
on the
without
right,
question.
on the right path, and that we remain sustainable for generations to come. It's a fantastic report. It seems to have been interesting speech. There has been a lot of talk about it in the media. Some people were glad that she said what she said, and others thought that it wasn't the time or the place. And so of course, in the BVI now, we have a myriad of opinions and persons feeling one way or the other. So the debate continues in the territory about who should do what, when, and how, and why. Thanks for that report, the interesting
Most
report.
welcome.